was on this with me last time, and here he is today, mashallah. Ashir Adrian Kirk is an old friend from Connecticut, and he's with us again, and it's a pleasure for me to have him involved in our organization, even if it's online and not in person. But he's out in Memphis, Tennessee, and he'll be doing the Tajwid, and he is a ashiq of Tajwid. He loves the science of Tajwid, and inshallah, when you take this class with him, it's actually going to rub off on you. That love of Tajweed. So let me, inshallah. So let me hand it over to Ashir. Again, let's start by telling us, something about when you started off, and what was the school like that you went to in Morocco? What was the Tajweed life like, and the Hifz life, I should say. It's more that you were living that life of Hifz every single day, all day, just Hifz.
Yeah. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. So, my Tajweed journey started in Syria and Damascus, where I spent about 4 years. And, Syria is known for, their Tajweed scholars, as well as, the Arabic language, among other things. But those two were kind of like two of their really biggest strengths, if you will. And so Tajweed was just like readily available, like everywhere. And all the masajid, pretty much, they had shuyukh, everywhere, mashallah. You could find people to teach Tajweed. And one thing that I found that was really awesome and amazing about the scholars of Sham was just, they were just so open and just so giving with their time. Right. And so one example, two of my teachers, one of my teachers, my main teacher was Sheikh Anas al-Hibri in Syria. And then my second teacher was Sheikh Samir al-Nas, Dr. Samir al-Nas. And both of them would come to the masjid in the morning after Fajr and teach for about 3 hours straight, right after Fajr, right after the adhkar and everything like that. About 3 hours straight, anywhere from 75 to like 100 students or so. They would sit and they would listen. And keep in mind, you got all these students there, and you sit there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on when you showed up or whatever. And most of it was listening, which was very interesting, right? By the time you started to read, by the time you got to read, you might have only read for maybe 5 minutes, 10 maybe at the most if you were like a really advanced student reading a lot, but that was it. And then the rest of the time was spent literally listening to other people recite, make mistakes, and get corrected, and that was just an absolutely phenomenal experience. And so from there, so you go in the morning. In the afternoon, between like Dhuhr and Asr time, you could go to their places of work. So Dr. Samir has a medical clinic. He would literally teach classes at his medical clinic between patient visits. MashaAllah, right? I personally experienced this myself along with a friend of mine. Going there and you wait until he's available. You go into his office, sitting right at his desk. Just open your book, start reading, and he'll stop you and start explaining, and so on and so on and so forth. If you got a phone call, you pause, take the call. If you got a patient, hold on, wait a second, go out, you do what you need to do, come back, continue the class. Sheikh Anas, he owned a tire shop and a children's clothing store. So we'd go to his clothing store around Dhuhr Asr time. Same thing in his office, read to him. If he has something to do, he'd come back, blah, blah, blah. And then in the evening, around Isha, after Isha time, Sheikh Anas opened his home up, and you could go to his home all in the same day. You could see him at the masjid, go to his shop, and then go to his home in the evening, all just to do tajweed and hifz as well. Well, it was hifz and tajweed for most, and some were only doing tajweed. And so this was the experience of studying in general in Syria. Mashallah, was the most amazing experience. I personally haven't seen it anywhere else on this level, but I'm sure there are some shuyukh around the world who probably also do this, like the Habaib in Yemen. I know they do something similar. And so that was my journey in Syria. As for Morocco, they have the Madaris Atiqa, the traditional Quran schools. I was in a small town called Qalat Saragna, about an hour or so outside of Marrakesh, and it was, typical Quran school experience. You memorize it every day. The only difference is they did the boards, so we actually wrote the ayat on a board. They call it a lawh, right? In Arabic, lawh, alwah. You write it. The ink is made out of like a burnt sheep's wool. They got from a very specific part of the sheep. They would burn it until it turns into charcoal, and then crumble it into like dust, and then mix it with water. It was actually kind of oily, which was interesting. And they put a sponge at the bottom of a jar and pour the ink over the sponge so that it would absorb it. And you made pens out of bamboo that you cut into the shapes of pens and so on, and then it would make little canals or whatever in the pen to make it absorb the ink. And then the sheikh would dictate on you. You would write and then repeat what you wrote to them and stop where he stopped, and then he would continue, and you would do like that. Then you would pass the board to him once you were finished. He would make sure you didn't make any writing errors. He would make any corrections, pass it back to you. Then you recited to him, and then he listened to make sure that he didn't miss anything. And it was this like back and forth, absolutely amazing. Then you would go off and memorize the whole day, and then when you were finished, you'd come back, turn the board to face him, and recite. From memory. You made a mistake, you had to go back and fix it. If not, you wash the board off, and then you let it dry, and then you started the same process over the next day. And throughout the day, you just kind of reviewed along with other people. And so that was a bit of my experience, alhamdulillah. Although I have to say, I started in the U.S. with Sheikh Ahmed Lamfaddal in Connecticut. So, so on to the course. So I can share my screen too, right? That was
yeah.
So let me see here. Let me see application window. I think that's the document there. You guys can see my screen? You guys can see my screen? Dr. Shetty?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, all right. So first things first, the course materials. Oh, sorry. The last thing is I here in the U.S. I studied with Sheikh Abu Salman, Sheikh Muhammad Al-Ubaisi. That was in Ohio, and he gave like ijazat and stuff like that. And so for people familiar with him and that community up there, that's where I got the ijazas from. Was from him. So the course materials and the requirements, pretty simple and straightforward. Number one, you have to already be able to read Arabic with a certain level of proficiency, right? Doesn't mean you have to know, it doesn't mean you have to be like, the most perfect reader and not stumble or stammer at all whatsoever. You can have some stammering, some stumbling, that's fine. But my point is it can't be a situation where the student still is kind of mixing up fatha, kasra, dhamma, shadda, sukoon, ba with this letter, that letter, mixing up letters. It's kind of like you got to kind of get that stuff in order before coming to the class, because it will slow you down a whole lot if you have to kind of keep up with, just finishing up learning how to read along with, learning tajweed and how to pronounce everything and so on and so forth, right? And so we're gonna, so you got to have the ability to read Quran proficiently with little to no assistance at all whatsoever, inshallah. Then the next thing is a Uthmani script Quran. That's the ones that's like the ones that come out of Saudi, right? Or anyone that matches that script, right? The reason is because that script actually has tajweed built into the script. I wish I would have put an example in this document about that too. But for example, even the fathatan, kasratan, dhammatan, they're written differently according to what rules should be applied to it. So for instance, those of you who have a little bit of background, idhar would have a fathatan or kasratan that's perfectly aligned. They're like perfectly lined up, right? They're right there. And then like ikhfa and idgham, for example, the fathatan, kasratan would be kind of offset. It would not be perfectly aligned, it'd be offset. And these are things that they did intentionally to help the reader be able to identify certain rules visually as well, right? And then the dhammatan, so on and so forth, has the dhamma with the line versus the two dhammas. These are all according to the tajweed rules. So the Uthmani script has tajweed built into the script, whereas the South Asian script, like the Urdu-like script, Persian script or whatever, I don't know the official name for it, but that one does not have tajweed built into the script. And so it really helps to have that Uthmani mushaf. And when I say dedicated mushaf, what I mean is you want to use the same one for all classes. It's just better. It's just better to use it, just for the sake of consistency and, page number being the same, placement of the verses all in the same place. So, so it's not cause any confusion, later on. And so I really do recommend a dedicated mushaf that you bring to every single class, inshallah. The next thing is, I said bundles of humility, right? It takes a lot of humility to really get through tajweed. It's a real good way to like shatter one's nafs and really tame one's nafs. Why is that? Because we start off with the bare bones basics, right? And when you've been doing something for so long, like reciting Quran, reciting Surah Fatiha, for example, and then someone says, all right, now let's start with Fatiha. Number one, you got to have some humility to be like, all right, bet, let's start with Fatiha. Bismillah. Most people are like, well, I think I know Fatiha, right? Like, well, let's see. Let's see how well you know Fatiha. So we start with Fatiha, you recite that, and we go from there, right? And so that's number one. But then if you start to realize, oh wow, I'm making mistakes. I made a second mistake. I made a third, fourth, fifth. Oh my God, my Fatiha is all messed up, and I've been Muslim my whole entire life. Relax, it's okay. It's okay, right? But you gotta be, I gotta have a certain level of humility to be able to to be able to handle that. You got to be okay with that. You know what I'm saying? And then finally, just that repetition. Go back, do it again. Go back, do it again. It just takes some humility to do that. And the next one I said, mad patience, right? That's just me, like, just being funny, right? A lot of patience. You got to have a whole lot of patience, because it may be that you don't perfect your Fatiha for months. Allahu alam, right? I knew. I mean, even Arabs, right? I knew there were Arabs in Syria, people who were Syrian, right, who would be on Fatiha for 3 and 4 months straight before Sheikh would let them advance, right? So this is not a thing of anyone has an advantage over the other. Tajweed is a science. If you don't study it, you're not going to master it. It's as simple as that. So I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what languages you speak. It doesn't matter. Tajweed is its own thing. Quran is its own thing. It is unique. MashaAllah. It's the book of Allah, and it needs to be studied. It needs to be studied in order to understand it or even properly recite it. So if you don't study it, you're not going to master it. It's as simple as that. And so you got to have a lot of patience. It might be a while before you really get your Fatiha tight, and that's okay. You just got to be okay with that and just keep it trucking. The next thing is you got to have some serious listening skills. You got to really, 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 really listen, not only to your own recitation, but to the recitation of others. I always tell people Tajweed is one of those things. It's one of those subjects that having one-on-one with the teacher is not actually like bragging rights. A lot of people say, yeah, I got the private classes with Sheikh so-and-so. It's just me and him, me and her, and that's it. Well, with Tajweed, is not necessarily an advantage. That's a disadvantage. You want other people in your Tajweed class. You want to hear other people reciting. You want to hear other people getting corrected, because that helps you. It actually helps you. Remember what I said in the beginning? We would sit there and we'd only read for 5 to 10 minutes max, but then the other 2 hours, 3 hours was spent listening to others, and that was the majority of the benefit that we got, was actually hearing others be recite and be corrected. And then, and so, it's a different, it's really a different experience. So you have some really good listening skills. And another thing about the humility too, this kind of goes back to the humility. You'll develop a very keen ear for good tajweed and poor tajweed, right? And so you got to be able to be humble enough to withhold and refrain from pointing out that people have bad tajweed. Because in the beginning, you might not be able to pick up, right? You hear somebody have a beautiful voice. Tajweed is all jacked up, right? But you don't know that. You just hear the beautiful voice. You don't have an ear for Tajweed. You just have an ear for, beautiful voices, right? Which most of us do, right? And so all of a sudden you start studying Tajweed in depth. I promise you, guaranteed, you're going to develop a very keen ear for Tajweed, good Tajweed and poor Tajweed. And so it's going to be tempting to be like, man, that guy's Fatiha is messed up. Oh man, that guy was messing up all kinds of stuff. He wasn't doing any qalqala. He wasn't doing any this. Da, 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 da. So gotta be able to tone it down. Don't talk about anybody's Tajweed to anybody else. Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself, and just use it as motivation for you to, kind of stay on top of yourself, and to help, perhaps use it as motivation to teach, right? Maybe offer your services to the person, and after you get to a certain level, say, hey, listen, doing some Tajweed classes, you want to join, Bismillah. And so use it to lift people up, not to break people down, not tear people down. So we got to stay humble, inshallah, throughout this experience. And last but not least, in terms of requirements and course material, a great sense of humor. I'm a jokester. I joke a lot, you know what I'm saying? But then you also have the part of, like I said in the video, in order for me to give you an idea of why I'm correcting you, I have to repeat what you say, right? And so it might sound like I'm mocking you, but I'm actually not, right? And this is, now mind you, I'm just teaching the way I was taught. This is how all my teachers taught me. They would repeat what you say, right? And then say it the right way. And so, I might say, okay, you don't say, F-wedge, it's F-waj, right? F-waja, not F-waja, F-waja. But I'm not making fun of you. I'm telling you, this is what I hear, right? And this is what I want you to say. But then in general too, I tend to just joke, I poke fun sometimes. I'm not picking on people. I'm not a bully, right? But I mess with people once in a while in my class, kind of keeps everything kind of upbeat and not so dry, but it's just a part of my personality. If you don't like it, just tell me, hey man, I don't like when you joke with me, and I'll joke with everybody else but you. I'll be dry with you. So the next thing is the goal. The goal is getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Through getting our Tajweed game tight. Simple as that, right? We want to get our Tajweed game tight because we want to preserve the Quran, or contribute to the preservation of the Quran through reciting it properly, as well as memorizing. But for those of us who find difficulty in memorizing, right, then this is one way you can contribute heavily as well, is through preserving the proper recitation and passing that on to future generations, inshallah. So we'll begin with definitions of Tajweed, both literal and technical, history of Tajweed, ruling of Tajweed, the virtue of reciting Quran with Tajweed, as well as etiquette with the Quran in general, what you should do before to prepare reciting Quran, during the recitation of Quran, as well as after studying the Quran, which obviously after is, it just means like, once you reach a certain level, there's expectations, but like, or not a certain level, once you're on the journey, period, once you started, there's certain expectations that are upon us. But Dr. Shadi, how much time I got? Am I finished?
Keep going, whatever you need to say.
All right. Yeah, I'm almost done anyway. It's not. So then, and then once we get past all the, those preliminary things, that's all important. Whenever studying the Islamic sciences, you'll see a pattern of that, going over the definitions. It's really important to understand what it is that you're studying, right? So that you're not caught off guard. Well, why are we covering this? Why is he doing that? Why is he nitpicking here? Why? Well, when we do all that preliminary stuff, it knocks all that confusion out and gives you a clear idea as to why everything is the way that it is. And so the next phase after that class, we will start with the theory, right? We'll start learning the theory and then applying right away. So the way it's going to be is we're going to do 2 classes a week. We're going to be Thursday and Sunday, right? So on Thursday, let's say, for example, on the first day of the week that we do, of the 2 days, we're going to study theory. And then the next class, we're going to do drills to help us apply the rule that we learned in the previous class. As we progress, you'll be expected to apply more and more of the rules that we learned. So say, for example, we learn idgham in the first week. We're going to learn the theory, right? What is it? What does it mean? How do I identify it? So on and so forth. Look for examples in the Quran on our own, kind of split up, take some time for ourselves, find it in the Quran, share our examples with each other, make mistakes, get corrected, gives us a better understanding, right? Next class, all right, we're reciting, boom. We're going to try to, I'm going to hold you accountable for being able to apply that rule, right? Based on our previous class. And then the next time we'll do, let's say, idhar. And then the next application class, I'm going to expect idgham and idhar. And then the next application class, idgham, idhar, and iqlab. And so each time we go, we're going to build up. So by the time you finish, you'll be expected to be able to at least identify, as well as apply at least to a certain level, right? Because everybody's at different levels. Not everybody's going to be at the same level at the end of this class, right? But at least you're going to have an idea of how to apply it properly, at the very least, if not master it, inshallah, right? But you have an idea of how to apply it, and also you'll be able to identify it, right? And so you just be held accountable for more and more the more that we learn. Whatever we don't learn, you won't be held accountable for it until we learn it. But the very, very beginning, we will go back to the basics. Just really quickly kind of breeze through, right? You see in this chart here that I have, this chart with ba, right? This is ba in 12 different ways, right? First one, you got ba with fatha kasra dhamma. Then you have it with the, oh, I missed one. SubhanAllah. I didn't add one more. So it's actually going to be more than 12. It's 12 going to be 15. So you have fatha kasra dhamma. Then you have alif, ya, and waw. Then you have the ba with sukoons, preceded by fatha kasra and dhamma. And then you have the ba with shaddas as well, preceded by fatha kasra and dhamma. And you're also obviously going to have ba with the tanween, fathatan, kasratan, dhammatan, right? And so what's the significance of this? Why we got to go back to this? Don't we do this in Qaida Nuraniyah? Don't we learn this when we're like 5 years old? Yes, okay, it's fine. However, you didn't do it, most people, not all people, some of you might have, but most people did not do it with necessarily with tajweed in mind. We did it with reading the Quran in mind. So it's different, right? So I might be able to say ba, bi, bu, eb, ib, uba, abba, abbi, abbu, and all the other variations that can happen to that. Ban, bin, bun, right? All that with ba perfectly. Try it with ayn, right? Some people can say no problem. But some people have a really hard time saying ai with dhamma, with kasra, excuse me. Some people have a hard time saying with dhamma, right? The ayn with dhamma, have a hard time saying it. Some people can say no problem. But then you tell them say with sukoon, difficulty. I might say no problem, but then I say I might have a problem with that one. With sukoon preceded by kasra. Then you say I might have difficulty saying that one. Or I can say all 6 of those, but then I say fa'alul lima yurid. Fa'a, a'i, a'u. Right? I might have difficulty saying it with shadda. So how do we figure that out? By drilling ourselves with all of the letters in all of these various formats to see where our weaknesses are. So once we are able to identify our weaknesses, boom, we're able to hone in and inshallah fix those things. So we're not going to spend like half the semester on that, but I definitely want to bring it back to the basics, inshallah. And most of that will be kind of self-study, and you can contact me and we can kind of, if you need, and go over and so on and so forth. I could even create some recordings of it so you can practice with the recordings and so on and so forth, inshallah. But we will go back to the basics, and we will be talking about some of the makharij as well. It's not good to just skip things just because, most of us have done this. No. We're going to go through the basics. We're going to do makharij al-huruf again. Yes, we're going to talk about the letters of the throat and the tongue and if you did this, it's okay. Like I said in the other video on the podcast with Dr. Shadi, if you are already proficient in this, but perhaps never taught it, right, or don't have much experience teaching it, use that as an opportunity to learn how you can teach that material to other people. Because at the end of the day, why are we studying tajweed? Only to improve ourselves? No, to pass it on as well. Why are we studying Quran? Only for ourselves? No, so we can pass it on, teach it to our kids, teach it to our community members, maybe teach it to our parents, right? We want to teach as many people as we possibly can, but we first want to learn it learn it ourselves, right? And so the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you are those is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it, right? So in order for us to be khairun nas, right, or the best of people, it's not enough for us to just learn it on our own. We gotta be ready to teach it. So yeah, I know this already. Okay, have you ever taught it? If not, Bismillah, take notes on how it's being taught and try to use that, inshallah, when teaching others. Let me see here if there's anything else, right? Yeah, so everything else I pretty much explained. So that's pretty much it. So alhamdulillah, that's pretty much what our class is going to be like. It's going to be basically theory one day, application the next day, and pretty much simple like that. And then and somebody had asked too, if are we going to do any kind of one-on-one Quran training or anything of that nature? Yes, inshallah, at the end of the application class, especially, we will inshallah have one-on-one, between me and various students. Inshallah, we will have one-on-one recitation where a person can recite and I'll correct them and everyone else will listen, and you take turns doing that. However, the class is not that long, so we'll be limited, right? And so what we can do is some days after we've studied a certain amount, so that we can focus and hone in on application, we might I can dedicate some like whole classes from the beginning to just application, so as many people can read as possible. Some days we might just come on, Bismillah, let's get started. All right, who's here? Who's gonna get started? Boom, Bismillah, let's start. Fatiha, Nas, Falaq, whatever the case may be, right? Recite, and then we're gonna go through just like that, inshallah. But the last thing I'll say is there might be days where maybe only 4 or 5 people can read, and it might be 20 people, 30 people in the class, right? It might only be like, who knows, 4 or 5, 6, 7 or some people be able to read, 10 people be able to read this class, then the next 10 will be in another class, and so on and so forth. So I think that's everything. If anybody has any questions, you guys can direct it to Safin Society, and I can get back with them, inshallah. I hope so.
Thank you very much. And I told you, no one teaches a Tajweed class that's more energized than Ashir's Tajweed class. I remember even taking you conducted a class on a way in the car to Boston on Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Oh, okay.
And a ton of people actually never said it right. They had never actually been taught about the kasra and how deep the kasra actually should be. So the Ashir's class is going to be full of energy. But like you said, it's the very most important thing he said is that you don't learn Tajweed only when you're reciting. You learn Tajweed when you're listening as well. So if there are 10 people in the class, you're learning by listening to their mistakes as well, not just when you're reciting. And this is important for everybody to know, because I remember myself conducting Tajweed classes in which students would be sitting, waiting, texting, thinking that that's not part of the education until they come and they say, I only recited 2 ayahs. Come on, it's not fair. It doesn't work like that. You learn as much by listening as you do by reciting. So that's the most important point from Ashir's presentation. All right, Jazakallah khairan. So now we start next Sunday, but remember, Ashir's class meets Saturday and Thursday. So your first class will actually be on the 25th.
Oh, Thursday and Saturday. Sorry, I said
Thursday and Saturday. Yeah. So we start on Sunday, but Ashir's first class will be on the 25th, Thursday, the 25th. Okay, and then meet again on the 27th. All right. So those are the classes now for Ashir. Now for Ashir, youth could take the class too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ashir's class is the crossover between the youth and the adults.
Yeah. Son, daughter, mother, father, mix and match, auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa, everybody can do it together.
As long as the person doesn't stutter over letters and tashkil. You got to know your letters. You got to know your tashkil.
That's just know the letters, know the tashkil at least like really well. If you stammer, it's all right, but you got to learn those things, like get that like real tight before joining the class. It'll be an easier experience for you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ashir. Jazakallah khairan.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome.
All right. So Ashir's class is the crossover between youth and adults. Did we freeze or what? All right, we good? So Ashir's class is a crossover. Youth could take it, adults can take it. Now we shift over now